So that means action then.
It is. Better tell him who you are.
Right, Mr. Nash, part of the UK's team of best kitchen painters. Um, Andy's accepted a photograph of some of my brushes, which have all been numbered. As a brief description of what they are, brushes 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 are various brushes for softening. There's a dragger, a stippler, badger hair softener, which I would use for putting decorative effects on various panels or doors of a kitchen. Some of them are synthetic bristles, some of them are natural bristle.
What do you rate
The
as the best ones then?
brushes,
What do you rate as the best ones? Synthetic or
the
natural?
best ones, depending on the paint really. If I'm using an oil-based glaze such as Ratcliffe's, which I still rate as one of the best that you can possibly use, I would say there's nothing to beat it than a badger hair softener.
Right.
Natural bristles. There's Polyvine have brought out synthetic brushes and softeners, but to be honest, they're not a touch on the original badger hair softeners,
Right.
which obviously the badgers aren't very happy about because they get bald.
So how
Yeah,
much can you remember how much you
so
paid
that's
for your first one? Can you remember how much you paid for your badger softener?
my best badger hair softener I paid £86 for, which is made by a company called Whistler.
Oh, okay.
Which make fantastic softening brushes. They really do, absolutely brilliant. In my mind, again, the Rolls Royce of badger hair softeners come from Whistler.
Okay.
There's other companies that copy them, which are almost as good. They're good enough, but I stick with what I know and what I use, really.
Cool. All right then.
And from there, I've gone to 6 and 7
Yeah.
and 10 and 12, which are Purdy's standard paintbrushes, Monocoletes and Purdy Extras,
Okay.
which I would usually use for applying oil-based or waterborne or water-based paints.
Right. So they're equally as good. Do you find them equally as good in oil and acrylic?
Yeah, I think they are actually. Some of the old original oil-based paints, you go to the original natural China bristle, which comes actually obviously from the name from China, made from pig's hair. But I would always use those years ago with old oil-based paints. But I think the synthetic brushes now, such as Purdy's and Worcester's especially, have, if not caught up and in fact taken over. But I would use Purdy's little brush with any paint.
Right. Yeah, that's a fair comment.
Um,
What's your next one then?
There I've gone to brushes 8 and 17, which are sets of fitches, lining fitches, brushes like that for fine-nailed work. Some of them have got up to handles for getting into really difficult pieces, which are very difficult to get to places,
Yeah.
which my grandfather used to say, if you can see it, you can paint it.
Correct.
Which is very true.
Yes.
They're made by a company called Royal Langnickel, which some of them are Winsor and Newton as well. Excellent brushes for getting into really fine, detailed work, and they work also with oil-based or waterborne paints.
Okay. So do
And
you
it's
use them
surprising
regular?
that I use those brushes quite a lot as well.
Yeah. Okay.
From there it goes 15 and 16, which again are made by Royal Langnickel and are quite noticeable from their bright orange filaments.
Yeah.
But I use those for laying off on big panels of doors and whatever, and they are fantastic when they're used with Sakura waterborne paints.
Right.
You can actually get a spray-like finish. They are fantastic. Which first off, I put the paint on, as you'll see down below, 18 and 19, my rollers. I put the paint on with the rollers, then lay them off with Royal Langnickel brushes, which I'll say are 15 and 16. 16 is actually made by a chap called Bob Ross, another American,
Right.
which I use a multi-mottling brush. It's called a blender, really,
Yeah.
which again can be used with the stipplers and draggers for decorative paintwork. 13, again, is a small badger hair softener, which is a fantastic brush. It's got about 12, 13-inch long handle, but a really well-made actual brush. It's fantastic.
Right.
For getting into really all areas. If you're colour washing some various doors where there's very small core can't get into with a normal brush, that one will certainly get into it and soften it beautifully.
Okay.
So using, say, brush 13 with number 5, you can do any size panel or door and get some amazing effects.
Right.
Also, used for marbling and things like that as well. Obviously, not the old standard Worcester silver tip, which I use for letting off on very large kitchen panels, but again, a fantastic brush, absolutely brilliant.
How do they do that for the money?
I beg your pardon?
How do they do that one for the money? Because it's cheap as chips, isn't it?
It's a cheap brush. I've used mine now day in, day out. It gets a lot of hard use and I still think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Recommend it to anyone. Laying off big panels, put it on with a silver roller, lay off with a Worcester silver tip. Fantastic.
Yeah.
We'll drink to that one.
These Americans know what they're doing with brushes, don't they?
Well, yeah, they know what they're doing with certain things.
Yes. Yeah, the old ways are the best.
Brushes 11 and 14, again Purdy, sash brushes.
Okay.
Which I use for obviously painting sash windows, but as far as kitchen goes, again getting into the corners of panels. The Storbo roller can actually get the paint on, but it can be quite difficult in corners.
Okay.
So I have got a various of sash brushes made by Purdy again, some thin, very, very thin ones, which are brilliant for getting the paint into the corners. And then lay the panel off again with the Royal Langnickels, and again get a fantastic finish.
Yeah.
18 and 19 are the two rollers I use. I use small flock rollers and Sorbo foam rollers.
Okay.
The tray 19 has got the tray I was using on the day I took the photograph, which has got the Sorbo foam with the Worcester Alpha for laying off.
Okay.
20 is what some people call an atomizer or a garden sprayer. But believe it or not, before I painted the I prefer to call it an atomizer.
Absolutely.
And I actually spray the panels or doors with a very fine mist of water before I apply the paint with a Sorbo roller.
Okay.
Because the waterborne paints, dare I say it again, made by Takura, you lay the paint on and the water allows the paint to flow out so well. When you lay it off with a Royal Langnickel brush at the end, you get a beautiful smooth finish.
Right.
And I use the atomizer or the garden sprayer every day, and I've got 3 or 4 of them. One of them's got a very slight detergent in it, so if the sissing starts to occur, I spray it with that with a small amount of fairy liquid in it. Problem solved. If I'm using oil-based paint, various solvents in to spray on the panels first. And 21 is a paint stirrer. So yeah, that's a brief rundown of an average kit that I've got on every kitchen that I paint.
Right.
I've got 4 boxes. One I use for masking and taping up.
Yeah.
Another box for fillers. I've got another box just for sanding, and then my pride is the brush box.
Sure.
Which is an aluminium case with various shelves in to house all the brushes. So there they are, Andy. That's a rundown of my photograph of my brushes.
And have you had a lot of these brushes for forever?
Yeah, some of them, believe it or not, I've still got some of my grandfather's brushes. Now, there's, I can tell you numbers, numbers 4 and numbers 3 belong to my grandfather. And I'm afraid to say number 4 is now starting to lose its bristles.
Aren't we all?
I will not throw it out. Obviously, it's my grandfather used, my father used, and now I'm using them. And the number 3 isn't quite as old, but they've been well looked after. The natural hogshead brushes, and I still use them, but I think 4 will be just used as an ornament soon on top of the TV.
Right. That'll be your pendant.
I've also got some grading combs and various other tools which aren't in the photograph, which we could about another day, which were my grandfather's as well, which he used for doing grading on doors, cabinets and all sorts of things.
Right. So you actually worked with your father, and did you ever work with your grandfather?
Very, very occasionally. He was all I can remember. My grandfather mainly was he used to hand cut his wallpaper before he hung it. So in the evenings, he was sat in his chair, actually hand cutting the wallpaper as they used to in the old days.
Instead of the selvage, yeah.
Absolutely, but it was my actual father that taught me to hang paper.
Okay.
And one of the things he used to do was put a blue dye in the paste. So if you put the paper up and it wasn't right, you get blue lines down the joints, and you rip it off, do it again. Rip it off, do it again, until you got it spot on.
Way to go.
Which I cursed and swore, you can imagine. But at the end of the day, it did teach me to hang paper pretty well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which again is one of my specialities. I love hanging wallpaper, but don't get out to do it very often these days, to be honest.
No, it's the trend is.
But I dare say when the marketing people change their views and change the styling and whatever, it'll all come round again.
Absolutely, yeah. Nothing's forever.